Welcome back to Mission Control. That was a look at some of the training that Mike Hopkins has been doing as he got ready for his launch yesterday at 3:58 p.m. Central Time. We have with us today Mark Guilliams, who is one of Mike Hopkins' trainers and the lead conditioning and strength specialist for us here at Johnson Space Center. Right?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I think Mark is going to be able to tell us a little bit about what Mike has been doing and the importance of that in general. But why don't we start out by just talking about what generally is required for astronaut training?
Well, for astronaut training, what we start about 2 years out from flight with these guys, and we just take them basically through physical conditioning. So it'll go from everything from just general running to weightlifting, getting the body prepared for flight. If they're doing EVA, we'll do some special training for getting them prepared for doing EVA. And then other than that, it's just general overall fitness.
So for people who don't know the lingo, EVA, that's a spacewalk. What's some of the things that might be specific to that?
Well, with EVA, one of the main, because you're working against a pressurized suit, you have a lot of hand and forearm fatigue. So we'll do specific exercises that will work a lot of forearm and hand fatigue. So we try to strengthen those up to get them used to that fatigue factor.
So you think about what the requirements are for anything that the astronauts might be doing and what they might need the strength to do, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, what generally, just for somebody going into space, what do they need to think about?
Well, there's a couple of things. Once you get to flight, zero G creates kind of the physiological changes that happen. We lose muscle. We lose not only muscle size, but we lose muscle strength. We lose power, the ability to develop power. We lose cardiovascular conditioning, and then we also lose a lot of bone. So when they get those things, they need to be aware of, and most of them are highly aware of what happens in zero G. So when we put together our program here, we're training them here in 1G to prepare them for in-flight and the things that we need to do in-flight to mitigate those particular losses.
So it's not necessarily, I guess, zero gravity. You're not lifting heavy stuff. It's all pretty weightless, I guess. So it's not that you need to be particularly strong for the work, but so that you can stay healthy in general.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're lifting, some of these guys are lifting pretty heavy loads, but that's mainly just to counteract that stuff. It has nothing to do with spaceflight. I mean, the ability to deadlift 450 pounds is not preparing them pretty much for something they're doing in space. It's actually conditioning the bones for the bone loss and muscle mass loss.
Well, Mike Hopkins seems like he's probably a really good example of fitness. It seems, watching that video, it was pretty impressive what he can do.
Yeah.
Is that the norm, or? And I think this is maybe some other video of his training that we're seeing here. Looks like he's doing some weightlifting.
Yeah, he's actually doing some squatting there. That's our gym there in Russia. So I can't tell how much load's on there, but it looks about 300 and something odd pounds. So yeah, he's a pretty strong guy.
So are most astronauts able to do that, or is he the exception?
Well, the funny thing about zero G now, you think about it from a 1G perspective. If he's doing 300 pounds and he weighs 200 pounds in flight, that now becomes 500 pounds because body weight's removed. So on certain exercises, we actually add back in the body weight.
Okay.
So to counter, because we lose it once we get there. So for him, I mean, for him to be able to squat 500 and something pounds in flight probably is not. He's already doing that down here. So for most people, what it is very interesting is because you add that body weight back in, a lot of them aren't used to having that much load, particularly just on their back. They're used to it being through the whole body.
Okay, so is that something that I know the equipment they use in space is called the ARED, the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, which is basically weightlifting type exercise, but in zero gravity, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it enables us to pretty much do anything we can do in the gym. So we squat with it, we deadlift with it, those which are our two main exercises for maintaining bone and muscle strength. And it can go up to about 600 pounds. So we can get a fairly good load out of it.
Okay, so that should be able to keep Mike busy and keep it straining up. I don't think that most of the astronauts are quite that advanced, though, right? Or is that true? Or
No, I mean, all of them are trained up really well before they get up there. I mean, every astronaut we have, once they're assigned a flight, they're squatting, they're deadlifting, they're doing those things in the gym prior to flight. So when they get up there, they're pretty much well prepared to do that. And it'll vary. I mean, yeah, I mean, Mike is fairly strong. I would say he's probably one of the strongest astronauts we have pound for pound, but it's relative to any individual.
Okay.
I mean, if Mike is lifting 90% of his strength, you would be lifting 90% of your strength. So it's relative to you. So
Okay.
and that's kind of how
It's
we
all
design
individually
that's how we
tailored.
yes, ma'am. We develop it from an individual standpoint. So 90% is 90% regardless of whether it's you or me. So it's still relative to us.
Okay. How far ahead do you start working on coming up with a plan for the astronauts when they're in orbit and working with them on what they need to know?
Well, we start working with them as soon as they actually come to NASA. I mean, we've been working with Mike since he's been here. Once he's assigned to a flight, then we're going to get much more general in what we're doing and try to be more specific to what we're doing and related to flight. And then I'm sorry, I forgot what was the other question about?
Just how early do you start working with them? It sounds like that's pretty early on.
Yeah, it's pretty early. Yes, it's really early on. So we've had some crew members that we've started with, and they could be in their mid-40s that have never really done a squat before. So we have to take that into account when we start training them. So with Mike, I mean, Mike played football in college. He was doing squats for a long time. So it wasn't a lot of training with him. It was just more putting the program together and getting him to follow the program. Now, as far as the in-flight program goes, we pretty much have a set program that we use with every individual. And we'll tailor it a little bit and maybe change a few things depending on a strength or weakness within that particular crew member if we need to for in-flight.
Okay. Well, I know once they get up on orbit, they work out about 2 hours a day. Is that right?
They're scheduled 2.5 hours a day,
hours.
and that will include the resistive exercise portion as well as the aerobic portion. So, but that also includes they have to set up. It's a little more overhead to get ready to run on a treadmill than it is down here. You just run in and push the button and go. You have to clean up, set up. You have harnesses you have to hook into and different types of things. So it's just a little more overhead, but that time includes all that stuff as well.
Okay. And then is there a requirement for before they go to flight how much they exercise a day or once they get back? Or?
Well, there is a minimum requirement of once they're assigned that they're within their schedule. They're scheduled to come in twice a week, at least twice a week for 2 hours a day. We try to usually break that up and try to get it to at least 4 days of 1 hour a day. With Mike, for example, it didn't matter when it was in his schedule. His schedule is we work out at 6 o'clock in the morning, so he works out before work. So every morning prior to flight, 5 days a week, he and I are in the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then when he gets back, will there be a set regimen for him to follow there as well?
Yeah. Yes. Once they return home for the next about 6 weeks, roughly, they're 2.5 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're assigned to us, and we just go through reconditioning with them. And at that point, again, we pretty much have a set program that we use, but depending on how each individual crew member comes back a little different than the next crew member, depending on how spaceflight affects them. And that then tells us how fast we can progress into the next stage of training from a post-flight perspective.
Okay. Well, just one more question for you then. I think
okay.
One of the things that we've been talking about a lot with Mike Hopkins is the Train Like an Astronaut program, and talking to kids about the importance of fitness and nutrition. I know, in general, you have to be basically physically fit to be an astronaut, right? What would you encourage kids to do now if they were going to want to be an astronaut?
Well, I think physical fitness, not even an astronaut standpoint, but just in general, is extremely important. When you talk about the obesity issues that we have in our country, and you look at disease, just high blood pressure, diabetes, all the things that we have that are very academic proportions in this country, then I think that exercise and physical fitness will definitely help those. So to me, you should always be moving. You should always be doing something. It's going to help you in every aspect of your life. So.
Okay, and I guess if you are interested in learning more about that, the Train Like an Astronaut program does have some suggestions on some of the exercises you might be interested in trying out, and you can find out more about that by going to their Facebook site at facebook.com/trainastronaut. You can see that here on the bottom of your screen. And you can also keep up with kind of their weekly workouts and fitness tips from Mike Hopkins and other astronauts at their Twitter site, which is twitter.com/trainastronaut. Thanks so much, Mark, for talking with us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me.